happening, fellow women's soccer fans? My name is Bryce, and this is the Women's Soccer/Football podcast. So, if you've come to talk about the world of WOSO and everything that's awesome in it, you've come to the right place. We've got another good show for you today. But first, I wanted to just take this moment and say welcome to all those who are new to the podcast, or for those of you who are returning. I greatly appreciate your time, and it means a whole lot that you're willing to jump into this world with me and talk all about its contents. Guys, if you like what you're seeing and hearing and want to share this podcast with your friends, we've got links down below to other platforms that we're on, including TikTok and Instagram, that you can watch at your leisure. And we also have an audio only version of this podcast that are on every podcast platform of your choice, including Spotify and Apple Podcasts, which, of course, I will link down below. So let's get right into the episode. But first, let's set the scene. So it is Wednesday, February 3rd, about 6:21 p.m. We just got 14 inches of snow not too long ago here in the Midwest, and it's freezing cold out. It's like in the tens, maybe in the zeros. It's been getting pretty cold, and we're supposed to get more snow tomorrow too. So be thinking of us, y'all, that are in nice hot weather. I'm super super jealous right now, but I've got my lights set to blue right now. You guys might be able to notice a little hue kind of going on in the background. Actually, here, I'll tilt you a little bit. For those of you who are listening on audio, I'm just showing everybody the light strip that I've got going on in the background. It's nice for mood lighting, especially on colder days like today, to set the scene a little bit more. And to my right, I've got a coffee mug. That's right. And this coffee mug says, "Coffee is a hug and a mug." And it certainly is. It's absolutely wonderful. Cheers. All right. So, we've got a good show for you guys today. Like I said earlier, we've got some segments, we've got some main topics, and it's all just going to go around the world, especially in the world of the FAWSL and the NWSL. So I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Let's get right into it. So our first main segment today is going to be the Women's Footballer of the Week. For this week, I have chosen again to pick multiple Women's Footballers of the Week. The first of which is going to be Jill Scott for making her 150th WSL appearance as she played with Everton against Man United at the weekend. Very few players can boast that accomplishment. So, Jill Scott, cheers to you, my friend. And you've had a very illustrious career so far with the Lionesses, that's the English women's national team, and with Everton, Manchester City, and the like, and have succeeded in many, many facets of the game. So, huge props to you. And the other Women's Footballer of the Week is actually going to be an entire squad. That's right. Bristol City FC is going to be the other Women's Footballers of the Week. They picked up their first win of the WSL season and have made the WSL table much, much, much more interesting, which I'll touch on in just a little while. But with that, they they bested Brighton Hove Albion by a scoreline of 3-0 at the weekend. Ebony Salmon had the brace. She has scored most of Bristol City's goals this season and continues to be a shining light and a shining star into their club. And for that, we definitely appreciate you. So I said earlier that it made the WSL table a lot more interesting, and here's why. Let's take a look at the table. So I'll start off at the bottom half because that's where this gets interesting. In ninth, we've got Brighton Hove Albion with 9 points, no games in hand. We've got West Ham United in 10th at 7 points, 2 games in hand. We've got Aston Villa with 2 games in hand at 7 points. And then we've got Bristol City at the bottom of the table with a game in hand and 5 points. So essentially, what this means is if Bristol City were to make up their game today and win it, they would be only 1 point behind Brighton Hove Albion. And essentially they would be safe in terms of West Ham and Aston Villa because they have yet to make up their 2 games yet. But considering that Brighton hasn't made up has doesn't have to make up any games and would only be a point ahead of Bristol City if they made up their game, it just makes things at the bottom of the table look very very interesting. So that's something to keep your eye out on as time goes on. But anyways, guys, those are my Women's Footballers of the Week. Who are yours? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know who you got. All right, so let's get into the second segment, which is going to be the weekly recap. For this segment, I just like to take you guys on a tour of what's going on around the world in women's football. Of course, I don't get to everything because there's probably a ton of news that I'm missing, but nevertheless, I try to cover it all here just to get you guys brought up to speed. So let's get into it. The U.S. Women's National Team roster for the She Believes Cup came out on Monday, February 1st. Vlatko Andonovski woke up bright and early and got the roster out. I'm sure he had a long night previously, but hey, he's got a lot of talent to pick from, so a ton of people Don't envy his position, but also envy his position at the same time. It's very, very interesting. There's a lot to unpack there, so I'll get to that into our main topics. But other news going on around the world, the transfer carousel keeps going up, down, and around. Starting with Chloe Lagarzo of formerly Bristol City. She has gone on a transfer from Bristol City to a new franchise in the NWSL, which is Kansas City. Which I'm really excited for FC Kansas City to get started because it sounds like they're going to have a dynamic team for their first inaugural season, and I can't wait to see how it goes down. But that's not all. Ruby Mace has joined Birmingham City from Arsenal. I believe it was on a dual contract, quote unquote. I'm using air quotes for those of you who are listening on audio. It makes it really interesting because I didn't know a dual contract was like a thing, and I'm not sure the specifics of that. So I encourage you all to do some research on that and learn about it at your leisure. But sticking with the transfer carousel and the WSL, Roosevelt scored her first WSL goal for Manchester City at the weekend. The defender for West Ham ended up losing her footing. Roosevelt took advantage and put it into the back of the net. Some of you might be wondering, wait a minute, didn't she already score a goal for Manchester City? You're right, she did, but it was not in WSL competition. So something to keep in mind as well. I forgot to mention it on the Sunday episode. In other news, shifting back over to the Americas with the NWSL has released their preseason rosters. And for those of you who don't really know what the NWSL preseason consists of, think of it as like, oh, what's a good way to put it? Training camp for the NFL, pretty much. They don't really play any games. I think it's just a way for coaches to kind of see what they're working with for the upcoming season, see who they're going to keep, who they're going to cut. For players like Becky Sarburn and Crystal Dunn, it's basically just to get them ready for the season. So coaches like Mark Parsons can get them ready, get formation started, see who's going to be in his starting 11, and then also see what other players he might want to keep or cut going forward. So that's pretty much what that is all about. One notable name that's been chattering on Twitter is that Crystal Thomas isn't on any of the NWSL rosters. There are murmurs out there in the Twitter sphere, which we do have an account on, by the way. If you're curious, give us a follow. But there's murmurs going on that Crystal Thomas might be making a move overseas. I've heard the name Celtic thrown around. Not really sure what that situation looks like, but that's also something to keep your eye out on. She was the striker out of Washington Spirit, and I believe she's also on the re-entry wire. For those of you who don't know what the re-entry wire is, that's basically like the waiver wire in all other American sports leagues. So something to keep in mind going forward as the NWSL season gets a little closer. Speaking of the NWSL, John Halloran of the Equalizer via Twitter put out some news the other day that more investors are going to be getting involved into the league. That's right. Specifically in this case, the Chicago Red Stars, two really well known Chicagoland investors, will be making an investment into the Chicago Red Stars. He didn't put out names because I don't know if he really actually knows who they are yet, but it's going to be interesting to see who those big names are because Naomi Osaka just last week announced that she is going to be a part owner of the North Carolina Courage going forward, which with Angel City coming into the league and also Naomi Osaka investing, we're seeing more big name investors getting into the league and growing it and then giving it more money, the ability to pay players more. It's really exciting. It's a trend in the right direction, and that just seems to be gaining momentum with each passing day. So I'm really keen on seeing who these two new investors are. That's something to keep in mind. One more bit of news for the weekly recap. Today, actually, just a few hours ago, the Continental Tires League Cup semifinal took place. There were two matches going on, of course, first of which was Chelsea and West Ham United. Chelsea bested West Ham's by a scoreline of 6-0. Pernille Harder had a brace, and Chelsea routed yet another team. They have won, I believe, 8 of their last 8. So Chelsea have just been going wild lately. And I'm not really too surprised. I had Chelsea winning this game by a pretty large margin. West Ham is not the better of the two teams by any stretch, and Chelsea have just been beating everybody. And whether it's top teams, whether it's bottom teams, they've been bossing it all. So no surprises there. But on the other side of that coin, we had, of course, our women's footballers of the week, Bristol City, facing off against Leicester City. And I've been eating my words because I predicted on a previous episode that Leicester City would best Bristol City and move on to the final, but I was wrong. Bristol City's Kiera Skeels ended up scoring a goal in like the last 30 minutes of the match. Not really sure exactly which minute because I was at work. I was only checking updates as time was going on, but nevertheless, Bristol City bested Leicester by a scoreline of 1-0 and are advancing into the Continental Tires League Cup making it 2 wins in a row for Bristol City, and I hope they keep riding that wave and get out of the relegation zone of the WSL because we all love a good comeback story. So that makes for a Bristol City and Chelsea final for the Continental Tires League Cup. I've got Chelsea winning that one pretty handily. I'm going to be, this might be a little insane, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that Chelsea will probably win this one by a scoreline of 7-0 just because of the way things have been going in the league. But time will tell. We'll see how it goes. I believe the final for the Continental Tires League Cup is going to be taking place next week, but don't quote me on that. I will give that update in Sunday's episode. So, guys, that does it for the weekly recap and segment 3. What are some news lines that I might have missed? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know. But let's move into the last segment, which is going to be my new favorite segment, the moment of silence. So, for those of you who do not know what the moment of silence is, it's essentially a time of reflection on your favorite things about the world of women's football, women's soccer. What are your favorite players? What are your idols? What are your role models? What are your favorite teams? This is the moment where you get to just pick a moment and dedicate a moment of silence to whatever comes to mind. So, for example, for me this week, I will be taking this moment of silence and raising my coffee cup, which again says coffee is a hug and a mug, and dedicating my moment of silence to Bristol City FC and also Jill Scott for the aforementioned reasons that I brought up in the Women's Footballers of the Week. So, on the count of 3, feel free to join me and raise a glass. 1, 2, 3. Salute. Oh, yeah, that feels right, guys. So, I ask you, who did you dedicate your moment of silence for? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know who you got. All right, guys. So, that'll do it for the segments for this afternoon. Why don't we get into some main topics and get into the bread and butter of this episode, which includes 3 different main topics. The first of which is going to be the She Believes roster that was mentioned on, or I'm sorry, revealed on Monday by Vlatko Andonovski. These are just some of my observations and highlights from said roster. But guys, before I get into that, I just want to remind you all that the She Believes Cup is going to be beginning in about 2 weeks on Friday, or on Thursday, February 18th, when Canada takes on the U.S. Women's National Team. It's going to be airing on FS1, if I am not mistaken. It should be a very, very exciting time, and I can't wait to see them square off. The teams that are going to be playing in the She Believes Cup include the USA, Canada, Brazil, and Argentina. And what makes it really exciting is Pia Sundhage, who used to be the U.S. Women's National Team coach before Jill Ellis was, is now coaching Brazil and will face off against the U.S. for the first time since she left the national team. So it should be really exciting to see how that matchup breaks down. I think the U.S. will win this tournament overall, but that's not quite the main topic for this particular main topic. So let's get into it. Who's on the roster? Who made Vlatko's 23-person roster? Well, starting off with the keepers, we've got Casey Murphy of the North Carolina Courage. We've got Jane Campbell of the Houston Dash. And then we've got Alyssa Nair of the Chicago Red Stars. Overall thoughts on the keepers. It's really cool to see Casey Murphy into the mix. I was kind of surprised by that, mainly because I expected to see Ashlyn Harris or Aubrey Bledsoe in here. But good on Casey Murphy for getting Vlatko's attention and getting into the squad. I don't know if she'll be in the cards for the Olympics. I kind of doubt it at this point because this is the first that we've seen her in the U.S. Women's National Team camp for a while, but we'll see. Good on Jane Campbell for making it to another camp, though. I contend that she's probably been impressing at camp because she's been backing up Alyssa Nair. She's been consistently making camps the last 3-4 months. So good for her, and no surprise that Alyssa Nair is coming to this camp. She's still the U.S. Women's National Team, unquestioned number 1 in my opinion. But moving on up to the defenders, so we've got 8 of them. No surprises there. Alana Cook, Tierna Davidson, Abby Dahlkemper, Becky Sauerbrunn, Crystal Dunn, Kelly O'Hara, Mitch Burse, and Emily Sonnet all make the squad. The one name that I think should have been in here was Ali Krieger, but I'll talk about that in a little while. But other than that, not really too surprised at who Vlatko took. I think that Vlatko is going to take 6 defenders with him for the Olympics, 4 of which are, without a doubt, Abby Dahlkemper, Becky Sauerbrunn, Crystal Dunn, and Kelly O'Hara. I think he's still trying to iron out who those other 2 spots are going to go to. For me, I think they're going to be Ali Krieger and Emily Sonnet, or they're going to be Ali Krieger and Tierna Davidson. But time will tell. It wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility for it to be Emily Sonnet and Tierna Davidson too. But with that in mind, I'm not surprised they took this group with him. So they're still vying for those 2 additional spots. Moving on up to the midfielders, we've got Katerina Macario, Sammy Mui, Christy Mui, the year of Mewtwo, Mewi, Mewis, whatever you want to call the dyad. They are amazing, and I'm glad they're on this roster. We've got Lindsay Horan, Julie Ertz, and Rose Lavelle. Um, Pretty par for the course for this midfield. I would contend Sam Mewis, Lindsay Horan, Julie Ertz, and Rose Lavelle are all in the top 5 in the world for midfielders. So, of course, you're gonna put the 4 of them in your squad when in the top 5 in the world. It's like they've been having a playing quattro for some time now, and it's no surprise that they're continuing to do that. So, good on them for making the squad again, and good on Christy Mewis for making the squad again because she's had one heck of a year, and she keeps riding that momentum and scoring goals for the U.S. Women's National Team. So there's that too. And then also good on Katerina Macario. She impressed in her first 2 caps against Colombia, and I'm looking for her to continue that momentum because if you ask me, she is the future. She is going to become one of the world's best someday, and I can't wait to see that go down. And I would contend too that Katerina Macario will make the roster for the Olympics this summer, so keep your eyes peeled for that as well. Moving on up to the forward line, so we've got Kristen Press, Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, Wynn Williams, and Sophia Smith. Now, the first thought that you might have is, where's Tobin Heath? Well, the problem is Tobin Heath, in case you haven't heard, picked up an ankle injury while playing with Manchester United in the WSL. In training, I believe, before they played Chelsea, she picked up an ankle injury. She didn't get a diagnosis till last week. And Casey Stoney, the United manager, confirmed that she will, in fact, be out for 10 to 12 weeks. So, obviously, we won't really see her for the She Believes Cup, unfortunately. But uh, I go into a lot more depth about that in the previous podcast episode, which I will also link down in the description below for your viewing pleasure. Long story short, though, I think that we'll still see her in the Olympics. She's still one of the world's best wingers, and she's still got all the talent in the world, so there's that too. I think it'll be a bigger loss for United than it will be the U.S. Women's National Team, but like I said, I talk about it in great detail in the episode that I mentioned earlier. But other than that, really cool to see Kristen Press back in the lineup, especially since she opted out last month because of COVID and everything going on. Also, really cool to see Alex Morgan back in there because she was diagnosed with COVID right before the Colombian friendlies began. Other than that, seems like status quo. Megan Rapinoe, Carly Lloyd, Lynn Williams. Really cool to see Sophia Smith in there because it seems like she's a bubble player. What I mean by a bubble player is she will either be included or not included. She's kind of on that, walking that line, and it's really cool to see a young talent like her get in there. So, full credit to Sophia for making it into the squad. And then something really interesting I've never seen U.S. Women's National Team camps do before. They included training players, and there were 3 of them. Vlatko picked out Mallory Pugh, Emily Fox, who was the #1 draft pick in the NWSL, and also Jaylene Powell Jaylene Howell. I don't know why I've got the name Powell stuck in my head. Jaylene Howell, who is the holding midfielder out of Florida State. Uh, Really excited because all 3 of them, I think, are really young pieces who are the future of the U.S. Women's National Team. And I would say that I think Mallory Pugh has a tremendous amount of talent and probably could have been picked to be in the roster, but I don't know if she's battling an injury. I don't know if Vlatko's got a master plan that just doesn't fit her into the squad, but who knows? Regardless, the 3 of them won't be playing in the She Believes Cup, but they'll still be at camp, so something to keep your eyes out for as well going forward. What are some of my main observations now that we've gone through the roster? For me, there weren't really a ton of surprises, right? One thing that I was really happy to see was Sam Mewis included in the roster. She picked up a knock in the second friendly against Colombia. It was an ankle sprain, which isn't a major injury, but still got question marks nonetheless. I think Vladko mentioned that she recovered a little bit more quickly than they originally thought, and she would be participating in the She Believes Cup. So when you've got one of your top 5 midfielders in the world who's questionable and she ends up being able to play, that's always great news. Moving on to my biggest surprise of the roster is, where are Ali Krieger and Ashlyn Harris? I know that's the question on a lot of people's minds. I'm just going to throw out a quote here put out by Meg Linehan on Twitter earlier this week. She quoted Vlatko saying, "I don't think we should read into it at all," when referring to particular players, including Harris and Krieger. I think that's really telling because I'm going to tell you this. Ellie Krieger and Ashlyn Harris still have a tremendous amount of talent. I know they're a little bit older, but you play to win today, you don't play to win tomorrow, right? They can both help your squad today. And I think Ellie Krieger really did a good job of proving that in the second friendly against Colombia. She was the main driving force into getting crosses into dangerous areas in that second friendly. She had the assist to Katerina Macario within the first 3 minutes. She had quite a good cross to Julie Ertz down the stretch. And I've heard arguments like, okay, Ashlyn and Allie shouldn't be in the roster anymore because they're getting up there in age, and there are younger players like Midge Burse, Emily Sonnet, who should be getting more time to prepare for the future. But like I said, the reality of it is your job is to win games today, not win games 5, 10 years from now. And if Allie and Ashlyn can help you today, you take them with you. I would contend that Allie Krieger is definitely more talented than Midge Burse at the right back area, and even Emily Sonnet too. I think Allie Krieger is still one of the world's best. So I'm taking Krieger over. I would take Krieger over Sonnet and Midge Burse any day. Just one guy's opinion, of course, but I think they should definitely be in this roster. I am wondering if they just opted out because of the coronavirus, COVID-19 pandemic going on, especially where they reside in Florida and where all the games are being played for the She Believes Cup. That's where the coronavirus has been raging for going on through the pandemic. So they could be exercising caution. That's all speculation, of course. So who knows? And by Vlatko saying that we shouldn't read into it at all. Um, I really don't think much of their disinclusion to the roster, if that's the right verbiage I'm using. But that's where I stand on that. I think Harris and Krieger are both super talented and definitely belong on the roster. And I think they're more talented than some of the other players on the roster as of today, too. But like I said, just one guy's opinion. Some other interesting observations from the roster. Mallory Pugh is a training player. I'm trying to put my finger on that because I know Mallory Pugh hasn't had a great last couple of years being injured so often. She's barely been able to play. I still think that with those injuries, it's really easy for her to fall off the radar, right? Like we haven't been seeing her play, which if you don't see her play at all, of course she's going to slip out of the mind. I still think she's one of the most talented young people in the entire United States roster. Only at the age of 22, she's been a pro already for 3, 4 years. She's still got a lot of potential. I think she will continue to capitalize on. But with her being interested, it shows that she's still on Vlatko's mind, but she might not be part of the plan right now, which, like I said, makes a ton of sense. She hasn't played in forever, basically. I think she played 30 minutes in 2020, and that's just not a big enough sample size, I guess, really to convince Vlatko that she should be in the mix as of right now. But even more so, good on Sophia Smith for keep being at the forefront, consistently being on Vlatko's mind and making the roster. So that's the flip side of that coin. One other thing, I know that the number of defenders Vlatko took in January was 10, which I thought was a lot, and now it's gone down to 8. He's still taken more defenders than he did forwards or midfielders, and I still think that that's evidence of him trying to sort out who that fifth and sixth defenders are that he's going to take to the Olympics. I think if Krieger, assuming that she did opt out, chose to opt in, I still think Krieger is going to go to the Olympics this summer, and Ashlyn Harris will be backing up Alyssa Nair. I predicted that when I first started making these predictions for the Olympics, and I still stand by that today. But if there's one thing that Vlatko's proven is that he's a master planner and a master tactician. So if he's got a master plan in his head and he's got players he's going to be sticking with, we won't know till the Olympics. So I could be way, way off on that. But guys, I want to know what you make of the U.S. Women's National Team roster. Are there any players that got robbed that should be in there? Are there players that are in there that shouldn't be? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. All right, guys, so let's move into the second main topic of the evening, which is going to be the FAWSL Match Week 14 preview. So, if you'll notice, if you've been following my content closely, you'll notice I've been accidentally labeling each match week a week later than it actually is. For example, last week I said was the Match Week 14 preview when it was actually Match Week 13. Now, this is Match Week 14, so now I've got my numbers sorted out. Now I hope I'm making a lot more sense. But 10 matches remain. The top of the table's been getting interesting. The bottom of the table's also been getting really interesting. Let's take a look at the standings as of today. So, in the top spot, we've got Chelsea Women's Football Club at 32 points, the game in hand. In second place and tied on points but not on goal difference, we've got Manchester United also at 32 points. In third, we've got Manchester City at 27 points with the game in hand. In fourth, we've got Arsenal with 2 games in hand at 23 points, trailing closely behind Manchester City for that Champions League spot. In fifth, we've got Everton with 2 games in hand at 17 points. In sixth, we've got Reading with 15 points. In seventh, we've got Tottenham Hotspur, 2 games in hand and 12 points. Eighth, we've got Birmingham City with a lot of games to make up, 3 games in hand with 10 points. In ninth, Brighton Hove Albion with 9 points. 10th, West Ham's United at 7 points, 2 games in hand. 11th, we've got Aston Villa, 7 points with 2 games in hand. And then in last, we've got Bristol City with a game in hand at 5 points. So basically, all with games in hand, what's separating the top 4 teams is 3 points, 2 points in some cases. So it's getting really, really interesting. I think the race for the Champions League is going to be quite something to look for. With United and Chelsea being tied on points, this it just keeps getting better. I would contend that this is probably one of the better WSL seasons in recent memory. You've got close races across the board, and it's really exciting to see. And it's really exciting to keep your eyes peeled and see how things are going down the stretch. What matches are going to be taking place this week, though, that might feed into those top and bottom table point differentials? So, first match of the weekend, we've got Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur. I've got Tottenham winning this one by scoreline of 3-1. Aston Villa hasn't been on very fine form lately. Tottenham, I would say, has been on better form. They've won their last 2 out of 3 league matches, and they only lost last week to Chelsea, who has just been stomping on everybody across the table. But I think Tottenham are really, really close to Reading, and they're going to want to creep into that 6th spot. So I think they've got a ton to play for this week, and if they win, it's just going to add to that momentum. So I've got them winning this one for match week 14. The second match of the weekend is going to be Manchester United and Reading. Manchester United is, of course, number one in my heart for those of you who don't know. So it's even more hurting that Tobin Heath is going to be out for 10 to 12 weeks. But I digress. I've got Manchester United keeping a clean sheet this week and winning by a scoreline of 2-0. I think since their setback against Chelsea, it's really rung some gears in their head, and it's going to keep them motivated throughout the rest of the season. So, will they win out? Hopefully, will they? Time will tell. It's the end of the season is going to come down really close. But for this week, they've done a really good job at doing clean sheets lately. I anticipate that continuing. They've defended really, really well. They've high pressed really well, and they've also scored when they needed to. They score enough to win. And with the top of the table only getting tighter, they've got more and more bargaining chips to play with as the weeks go on. And plus, Reading have only won one match out of their last 5. So Reading are not in good form, and United are and have a lot more to play for. Moving on to the next match, we've got the number one team of the table, Chelsea, taking on Brighton. I've got another slaughter for this game. Chelsea will beat Brighton by scoreline of 4-0. I'll just say this: when you've got Sam Kerr, Fran Kirby, and Pernille Harder all clicking on firing all cylinders, it's really hard to stop, especially when they're all on the same team. So just by that in itself is enough to convince me that they will handle Brighton pretty readily, especially since Brighton has been coming off of a loss to the bottom team in the table. So Chelsea are just going to keep cruising and they're going to keep winning as long as things are going their way. So moving on to the next match is going to be Everton and Birmingham City. I've got Everton winning this one by scoreline of 1-0. Neither team has been on really great form as of late, but I think Everton have a little bit more to play for. They've got Jill Scott now. They've got Alicia Lehman. I think Valerie Govan will find her form a little bit more going down the stretch, and I think they'll pick up a win here, a much needed one, because they haven't won very many matches lately. So, and at the end of the day, Everton are the better side, so I'll give them the benefit of the doubt of this one, and I will have them winning. Oh, excuse me, guys. So, moving on to the next match, which is going to be the game of the week. This is going to be huge because it's going to be Arsenal and Manchester City. This is going to be a top table clash that I think will decide who will end up taking that third Champions League spot. Whoever wins this one, I think, is going to ride that momentum to the end of the season and end up being in that third Champions League spot. So, needless to say, this game is huge for both sides. And now that Arsenal have like 2 games in hand, if they win this one, it's going to be huge. What do these teams have going for them? Arsenal, they're coming off. They're going to be well rested. Their last 3 matches have been postponed because of COVID. COVID. I almost combined COVID and coronavirus. Because of the coronavirus pandemic going on, they missed a match, and then because of inclement weather, they missed 2 other matches. So they're coming off basically a month of rest, meaning that they'll have a lot of time to work on tactics and recover their bodies. And in addition to that, they will have sights on revenge, because if you were watching the last matchup, the reverse fixture of these 2 teams, you will know that Caroline Weir ended up scoring a last second winner for Manchester City to overtake Arsenal in a match which broke the heart of Arsenal and their fans everywhere. My heart goes out to you guys, by the way. That was a hard one to watch. But with I think Arsenal, that will be fresh in their mind, especially since the top of the table is so close, and they'll have that riding on them. However, they might be a little rusty for this game because, like I said, they haven't played in a month. from what I hear, things that the club aren't going so well from a logistical standpoint and from a morale standpoint, so that might play a big part in this as well. On the flip side of that coin, though, Manchester City, they've been riding this wave and they've just been crushing everybody. They've been playing really well. They're firing on all cylinders. So they might ride that form. This match is anyone's guess. All I know is it's going to be a high scoring affair and it's going to be a shootout. But at the end of the day, I've got Manchester City winning this one by a scoreline of 3 to Arsenal's 2. So keep your eye on that. That's going to be the game of the week. And then now the last game of the weekend is arguably the second most exciting game of the weekend. It's going to be a bottom table clash between West Ham's United and Bristol City. I've got Bristol City winning this one by a scoreline of 2-1. Now, Bristol City are on a 2-game win streak and are riding uh, this really great wave of form. West Ham has been doing the opposite and they've been losing left and right. Um, they're within 2 points of each other, so this match is going to be big, and you don't want to get relegated. Obviously, Bristol City have been sitting in that position for a long time. I would say West Ham is the better team here. However, like I said, Bristol City are hungry. They have a lot more to play for. They've been riding on this great run of form. And I think that's going to give them the confidence and momentum in order to come through and win this game. And plus, if Ebony Salmon is having a day, which most days she is, it's going to make a big difference here. And I think Bristol City will prevail and go ahead and win this match. So West Ham is on upset watch. I've got Bristol City winning this particular match. Whew. All right, guys. So those are all my predictions for the WSL Match Week 14 fixtures. What are your scoreline predictions? What are your thoughts on the matches? What's your game of the week? Feel free to jump down in the comments below and let me know your thoughts. And also, I will post an article detailing the match preview for this week on the blog, which will also be linked down in the description below. All right, guys. So, with the second main topic down, let's get into the third and final main topic for this podcast episode, which is going to be mailbag. So, for those of you who don't know what mailbag is where I give you guys the opportunity to write in questions and have me answer them on the podcast episode so that we can promote some good conversation amongst each other and just have a ton of fun doing it. And and this week's question is going to come from Lucy. Lucy, thank you so much for writing in and submitting the survey. It's an absolute honor to have you join in this conversation with me and all the other WOSO fans from around the world. And guys, if you would like to submit a question for the mailbag topic on this podcast, there is a link to a Google form down in the description below to where you can submit any question as long as it's applicable and appropriate. I will do my best to get it featured on the podcast and give you a good response. So, without further ado, Lucy writes this question: how do you see Mallory Pugh evolving in the coming years? And do you see her as a key member of this team, referring to the U.S. Women's National Team? So, thought about this a lot, and I thought about this at work today too. It was on my mind. I think Mallory Pugh's got a ton of potential. I mentioned that a little bit earlier. I think Mallory Pugh has a ton of potential still to grow, and I still think she has a ton of talent. It's really easy for her to kind of drift out of mind because she's been injured so often the last few years, and I think she slipped the minds of a lot of fans, a lot of coaches, a lot of teams. But here's the thing: she's an extremely young talent. She's only 22. She's the same age as Emily Fox and Jaylene Howell, who are just coming out of school. And the only difference is Mallory Pugh has 4 years of professional experience and also 63 caps already under her belt with the U.S. Women's National Team. So she's made a lot of appearances. And she's come through the ranks and made a ton of noise throughout her young career already. She made a lot of noise with Jill Ellis's squad from 2016 all the way to the 2019 World Cup, where she featured in some games, scored some goals, had some assists, and performed on the world's biggest stage. Performing well at the world's biggest stage at such a young age, that shows a lot of poise, that shows a lot of promise. And just having that poise, that can take you very, very far in professional sports when you've got that it factor, that poise, that composure, that talent. All those combined makes for a world class striker or a world class player. I'm sorry. So, how do I see Mallory Pugh evolving in the coming years with all that in mind? I think Mallory Pugh is going to turn into a world class striker who isn't going to be one of the world's best, but she'll be world class if that makes sense. She'll be a key piece of the U.S. Women's National Team, but she won't be the piece if that makes sense. Mainly because I think the U.S. has done a good job of producing squads that are a ton of world class sums that make up a one of the world's best teams, and that's just kind of the cookie crumbles with that. But Mallory Pugh is going to be a force to be reckoned with for years to come. The only reason I don't think that she will be one of the world's best is because of her being injury prone. So it's no secret. In 2018, Mallory Pugh had a pretty significant injury. She's been injured for almost all of 2020. And with that injury proneness, what it's essentially doing is it's keeping her from being on the field. When you're not on the field, the reality is you're missing out on hundreds, if not thousands, of minutes to continue to improve on your game, learn from vets, learn from your own mistakes, and sharpening your skills, even on the training pitch too. And when you lose out on that time, it's like it slows down your growth. It slows down your growth by a lot. So I think it's going to take Mallory Pugh a little bit of time to get to that world class level because she will spend a lot of time, hopefully not spend a ton of time being hurt. But so far she's spent a ton of time being hurt, and it's limiting how fast she's growing, I think. But I just feel bad. I feel bad because it's no fault of her own, right? Like, you can't help being injury prone. That's just, I would chalk it up to just genetics. That's just kind of how it goes in any sport, really. There are just some injury prone players, and Mallory Pugh is one of them. But that doesn't take away from the talent that she's proven that she has and possesses. So I think she will reach her potential of being world class. I just think that with her having as many injuries as she's had, it'll limit that to her just being world class instead of being one of the world's best. That's being really cynical, of course. She could have no injuries after this year, which I hope is the case. I hope she never gets injured again, and she could become that one of the world's best forwards going into the latter parts of her career. So I'm hoping all the best for her, and I hope she does that. And it's all on the presumption that she can stay healthy, which um, you never know. I hope she can stay healthy, and I think she will. But um, another thing that kind of helps her case too, and helps kind of prove that she's still got a lot to contribute. She's really talented. Is I think a lot of teams still believe, if that makes sense. A lot of teams have believed and still believed in her talent and her buying in. The most evident circumstance I can think of is that the Chicago Red Stars trading for her, I think, is a big piece of that. So let me provide a little bit of context on this. The Chicago Red Stars have been going to the final or the semifinal in the NWSL every year for the last 6 years and have not won the title yet. So this year, with their trades, I think it's evident that they're really starting to try to get over that hump and really get to that to get to the championship and win it because they've gotten this close for the last however many years and just can't get over the hump. And their front line is lacking. I'd say it's the weakest part of their squad. And who do they look to improve it? Well, they go out and they get Mallory Pugh. Out of any player in the world they could try and go and get, they picked Mallory Pugh. Why? Because she's got so much talent, she's got so much upside, and she can provide a very good attacking threat for a lot of teams on that wing. And they see the talent. I believe in that talent myself. And they went out and they got her. And of course, the main thing you have to keep in mind is as long as she stays healthy, she will be a force for this team, for the Chicago Red Stars, and for the U.S. Women's National Team going forward. But she just has to stay healthy, is all. If she can do that, she will be a world class forward. She will be a world class player, and she will have a lot of great things to contribute to any team that she plays for. So, bottom line here is that Mallory Pugh is still young. She's got a lot of potential, and she's got a lot of talent. She will grow and evolve to be a world class forward, and she will be a key part of the U.S. Women's National Team and really any team going forward, provided that she continues to keep on the field and stay healthy. So, um, those are pretty much my thoughts on that particular question. Lucy, thank you so much for saying that question. I really appreciate it. It was a really awesome question, and I look forward to more questions from the future from you and also anybody else who's interested and wants to submit a question for the podcast as well. So, from the bottom of my heart, guys, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And with that down and out of the way, guys, that actually does it for the podcast. We have gone through all of our main topics, and I just wanted to say it was an honor and privilege to have all of you join me again on another podcast episode. We're 11 episodes in, going strong, and I hope you're having as much fun as I am. If you guys like what you're hearing and seeing, feel free to give this podcast a thumbs up or subscribe to the YouTube channel. Or if you want to tell all your friends about it, or you want to listen to it on audio, you want to follow us on TikTok and Instagram, all of that can be linked down in the description below whenever you feel like it. So, for those of you who are new, thank you so much for joining for the first time. For those of you who are returning, thanks for coming back. I greatly appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing you in the next women's soccer / podcast episode. I've been Bryce, and we'll see you in the next episode. And as always,